I can already see the dislikes on this video, but can you at least have a look at what I have to say before passing judgment? Thanks. So you read the title correctly. I'm going to share the most unpopular gaming opinion I have, that being that Fallout 3 is a piece of A little background history. My first Fallout game was the 4th game, which I adored. Then, because the 3rd game came with the 4th for free, I decided to try that as well. And I had the opposite opinion to that game. I hated it. I thought it was one of the worst RPGs I've ever played. And it might baffle you because Fallout 4 is literally a watered down version of Fallout 3. So it's gonna be tough to explain my position. I can't help but love Fallout 4 and hate its direct predecessor Fallout 3. So let me try to explain to the best of my ability why I heavily dislike Fallout 3. Let's get positives out of the way first. The opening with Vault 101 is decent. A good way to open up the game. There's Liam Neeson, and then there's Tranquility Lane, and everything to do with that is awesome. And that's it for positives. So my experience with Fallout 3 is after the decent opening, I was bored out of my mind trying to complete this game. RPGs tend to be long, so there must be some great writing alongside it. But that isn't the case here. My first town out of the vault was of course Megaton, and the open world design is really bland. The wasteland has a dull, uninteresting color scheme, which maybe that was the point, but that and the green tint doesn't help the game. Usually when I don't like a look of a game, that's going to hinder my experience to play it, and that was certainly the case here. Compared to Fallout 4, the wasteland has a lot less color to it. The entire map is just grey or brown, boring colors with a green tint, and I think the game could have gone without it. Graphics aren't everything, but the game is horribly ugly. NPCs have these really washed out, unnatural faces. And if I didn't know this was a AAA game, I would have thought that the NPCs were designed by amateurs. And I think I know now why the creation engine is very behind in technical terms. Like my experience leaving the vault. And before I made it to Megaton, I was attacked by raiders. And I quickly noticed, as if the prologue didn't make me notice already, how poorly designed the shooter mechanics are. For some reason, all your weapons are inaccurate, and you have to be in close range to an enemy to hit them naturally. But if you're using a gun, why would you do that? You would also be open to enemy fire, so it's just a death trap. I know they tried to make up with this for VATS, but I hardly hit anything even using VATS. I shouldn't have to rely heavily on an automated targeting system in a first-person shooter. Wolfenstein 3D had better shooting controls, because shooting enemies doesn't feel like a nightmare. And most of the weapons I got were overly crap, low damage, low ammo weapons. Like, I couldn't believe how scarce ammo was. And on top of that, items are on condition bars, and if they reach 0, they break and need to be repaired, either by you or a merchant. But I never spent any of my skill points on repair, because there were other things to spend them on, like speech and guns. So essentially my only option was to pay someone to repair my weapons. But then another problem arose. I had nowhere near enough money to purchase anything, let alone repairs. The money system in this game baffled me. It's so hard to get money that I just went and used everything I found off people I killed. And since I could only afford to take on raiders, I always got the crappy weapons, so I could hardly progress. And that leads me to yet another problem. This game is legendary in its difficulty. It's one of the hardest games I've ever played. It was hard to level up because quests were spread all across the map. There was hardly an early game area where you could just, level up. Most quests, from what I've seen, get you to go across high level, high enemy places across the capital wasteland to fight tough-ass enemies as a vulnerable one-man army. It was essentially luck that got me out alive, which was rarely. You will not believe how many times I died fighting enemies in the wasteland. And there was this other guy who I will not name that shared my opinion that Fallout 3 was garbage. But the one specific thing he thought that I didn't is that the game was too easy and mentioned mods that made the game harder. And that made my jaw drop. I was like, so wait, you think the game is too easy and there are mods that aim to make the game harder? What the hell? This game is so hard that it took me over a year of playing to beat it. And it was also because this is the most unengaged I've been in an RPG. I literally thought this was one of the most boring games I've ever played. As if the gameplay, mechanics, graphics, and presentation wasn't enough to push me away, the story is probably the core of the issue. I hated the story, and could barely remember or understand it once I beat it. I was really unenthused in finding out what happened to the player's dad. The player is given a set backstory, where I wish they would leave it a little more vague on the player's backstory. But hey, it might be the sort of RPG where it's who you become rather than who you were. So anyways, your dad, voiced by Liam Neeson, raises you alone in Vault 101. And of course, there's a lot of really overt writing throughout the entire game. Not only did Vault 101 suck as a location, that being because it and the other vaults have the most confusing navigation ever. Seriously, whoever designed the vaults sucked at map and level design. It's impossible to tell where to go when you're in a vault. It's horrible. So there's a riot in the vault or something, the overseer killed your dad's friend, and the overseer's daughter basically has you as a friend. And you get to choose whether to let the overseer live or die despite his crimes. Of course, I chose to kill him. I enter the wasteland, and the main quest is poorly designed. It's basically go to an area, ask around, until you are led to another area, to where you repeat the process over and over again. And since there's no sprint, the player moves so damn slow. Like I had to hum myself songs to avoid boring myself to death. And with the hordes of unbeatable enemies in your path, and no easy way to level up, because quests like Moira Brown's Wasteland Survival Guide is so stupidly long and puts you through dangerous missions with no point other than to write a book. Really? A book? You guys can do better than that. Another tangent I have is that the quests make absolutely no sense. Like the early game quests to blow up Megaton. Some evil guy just asks you to help him blow up the town because his boss wants it to happen. And the reason we get it from the boss itself is really stupid. And if you're not careful, you can blow up Megaton before you receive directions on where to go next. So that's a kicker in the nuts for you. There's nothing interesting to the quest. There's no real reason other than to be evil early on. Can't there be a more interesting reason? Like, what about a rival town that wants to exploit the bomb in the middle of the town and blow the whole place up? That's simple, but it's a better idea than what was given. So on with the story. The story is pretty bad because the first act is basically going to a location and asking around until finally you make it to Rivet City, where you get directions on where the hell you're supposed to go. That being Vault 112. And for the first time, the game actually gets interesting with Tranquility Lane. And after doing the guy's bidding, we finally make it out. We go back to Rivet City, but in order to progress the main quest, we have to help our dad with his science project. And then the Enclave shows up. And this is a retrospective complaint, but I don't like how they rehash the villains from Fallout 2. That was rather ridiculous. They should be defeated. The Enclave comes and kills your father, and of course the main bad guy escapes, Colonel Autumn. So you and Dr. Lee have to go to the Brotherhood of Steel base, and you're sent to go get a GEC for whatever reason, because I'm far from invested in the story. You have to go through a town full of children that makes no sense, and you finally get into the vault, and it's a barrage of super mutants which are impossible to beat, but if you somehow do get there, a friendly super mutant helps you get the GEC. But then you're captured by the Enclave and sent to Raven Rock. And after talking with John Henry Eden, who turns out to be an AI computer, you blow the place up, and you launch an attack with the Brotherhood of Steel, defeat the Enclave, but you have to sacrifice yourself to finish the game. And for some reason, your super mutant companion can't do it. And we know this isn't an oversight because there's literally an option to ask him to do just that, but he refuses for no reason. So the game ends. And by the way, I actually forgot what the number code was, so I had to look it up. And then the game ended. I was just asking what the hell I just played. How did this win Game of the Year? It was the most underwhelming RPG I'd ever played. I hated pretty much everything about it. And then what made my opinion of it even lower is that it turns out that the ending gets better if you buy a DLC called Broken Steel. Broken Steel! Are you kidding me? I have to spend more money to get the real ending? What a ripoff! The vanilla game should have enough of a self-contained story. So I'm just angry at this game. I never had any of the DLC on console where I first played it, and maybe the game is better as a complete package, which is representative of why I hate paid DLC in general. They just lock you out of content and forcing you to buy an overly expensive gold, deluxe, legendary, whatever editions, and it's a goddamn rip-off. I hate DLC. So after playing all the other games, my opinion on Fallout 3 didn't change. I thought it was a terrible game. In fact, knowing that New Vegas was going to be a lot like Fallout 3, my first few hours with New Vegas were quite poor as well, until I got used to it because of the better writing, more interesting and colourful world, and a lot of other improvements. That doesn't mean I still don't hate the gameplay. It's horrible. But at least there was something really good to the game that made me keep playing it and overlook its blatant flaws. I simply hated everything that was core to the design of Fallout 3. Everything was an epic failure. It was a clunky, broken, boring, and every other negative adjective in the book. I am dead serious when I say that I think Fallout 3 is a bad game. I didn't enjoy it. So what are your thoughts after hearing my take? Has my opinion changed? Do you agree? Or do you still love the game? I'm JJ Plagiarisms. And until next time, what are stories about mystery boxes?